Hello and welcome. In this video, we're going to go over the configuration and installation of the Admin Pro RS database front end. Admin Pro RS is a custom RADIA database front end developed for RADIA administrators that includes over 2,000 SQL queries and hundreds of custom reports for the RADIA inventory, patch, and usage databases. It runs on the same framework as a standard RADIA integration server and uses NVDKit and the same TCL interpreter. The server is hard-coded to run in program files x86 because there are some files that have that path in it. It's easily modified, but keep in mind there are some changes that we have to make in order to run it from a different location. For this demonstration, we're just going to use the program files x86 location. I've copied the zip file over to a temp folder on my workstation. The temp folder has a little bit less security problems when you're trying to unzip things, copy files, or create files. It just allows a little bit more flexibility. So I've copied the zip file here to my temp folder, and I've extracted the complete Webula folder into the temp folder. I can now copy the temp folder over to my program files x86 location where it's going to run from. So now I have my program files Webula folder. The first thing I want to do is come in here and change the permissions to allow the users to modify or create files, because we're going to, when we start this, it's going to try to create log files. So you have to have, the ability to read, write, execute, and modify, and all that good stuff, or the server is not going to start. So make sure you have set your permissions correctly. Inside of Webula is a standard RADIA integration server. We're going to run on NVDKit. We're going to run on the same httpd .tcl files as a RADIA standard RADIA integration server. The etc folder has two RC files. The httpd.rc runs when we use the batch file, and the webula.rc is going to be used when we start as a service. So they're different. They're used differently at different times, so we can configure them differently. And we're going to do that here in the httpd.rc file. You can set your port to anything you want, but remember, you should set it in both files identical. But down here in the module section, we are not going to load any of these modules. So that's going to give us the ability to start this service, start the server, and use the encryption tool to encrypt the passwords in each one of our configuration files. This is the inventory database, this is the patch database, this is the usage database. So when we come in to uncomment these, if you're not using usage data, don't uncomment it, just leave it commented out. And we're going to have to, again, we should do that in both of these files eventually, not right now. So right now they're commented out. We're not going to load any files. So let's go ahead and start this server. And we have started this reporting server on this server on 3477. So we can now go to that. I'm going to use this. And we can now access the web page. And that's going to give us the ability to use the encryption tool. So I have encrypted my password, and so now I can come into my, let's go ahead and close that so we don't get confused, and just let's work inside of this etc folder here in Program Files Webula. We can now come into each one of my files, because I'm loading all three, inventory, patch, and usage. So I need to configure all three of my CFG files. And so here, notice that this is going to be our encrypted password. It's enclosed in double quotes, and it has a prefix of in squiggly braces, in caps, AES. We're using AES 256 encryption. So this is our key. We can't decrypt without it, so it has to be set correctly here. Now, if you're using a different DSN for patch and usage, then you have to go through this process for each one of these files. If they're all using the same DSN as they are in mine, then each one of these files will be identical at the end, right? So this content is going to be the same in each one of my files, so I can then just copy that DSN from one file to the next. Now that I've set my configuration, I can come back into my httpd.rc file and I can load my modules, because now I want to check to see if I have a valid password and everything was entered correctly. So I want to make sure I verify this before I try to install it as a service, because this is the stage at which you want to catch any problems. So we've configured the http.rc file. Now we can come back in and run our server, and already in use because I did not stop it here. So we can now look at the screen and see that we've connected to all three of our DSNs. They're all the same DSN, they're separate databases, but they're all using the same information, but they're all connected. So we should be able to come into our reports and look to see if we can connect up and verify content. And here is our inventory content, here is our patch content, and let's go ahead and verify usage. And I have a SQL database, so usage content, and also I have a SQL database detail link. And I can see we have some database tables. Everything appears to be configured correctly. And so now we can go ahead and kill this DOS prompt and install as a service. So now we've killed the DOS prompt and we cannot get to that site. Inside of the Webula etc, you're going to go into the webula.rc file. Of course, this is going to be used when we run it as a service. If you're changing the port, you have to change it in this file as well. If you want to restrict access to a local account, you can uncomment this, and when you try to hit the web page, you're going to be prompted for a username and password, and you would have to have a local username and password in order to authenticate. And of course here you could use your NTLM group administrators as well. So you could restrict access here using some authentication. Inside of the module section here is where I'm loading all three modules. If you're not using the usage module, you're going to want to come in here and comment out. If you're not using patch, you're going to want to comment out patch. At the minimum, you're going to have to load the inv-db because it's otherwise useless without it. I am loading all three, but just keep in mind that here is where you're going to load or unload any modules that you're using or not using. Inside of the Webula bin folder is where we're going to run this batch file here and install the service. And this is one of the files that has a hard-coded program files, C program files in here. So one of the files that we would have to come in and modify. It's not the only file, but it's one of the files. This one run as administrator, and I already have it installed, so it's going to say already exists, which it does. The second file is the registry key. This is another file that has to execute, and this has also C program files hard-coded, but also in the image path is hex, and we can't change it here. So if we're going to change the location, we would execute this registry, go into the registry, and physically change the image path there, and then we would export the that file, so we would update it with the correct hex data. So here we're just going to double click and execute it. And so now we should have a service, Webula reporting server, that's the name of it. And we should be able to start the service. And it is now running. And now we can go back and we can verify. We have access to all of our data. And we do. Now the inventory section, this contains some core data. That's the data like device config and app event. That's sent by default. So there are some reports in here that are going to work even if you don't use Inventory Manager in the other sections, obviously patch and usage, but in here, inventory data consists of core data like app event, device config, device synopsis, SAP stats. You would have to enable that. In the COP settings, you would have to enable SAP stats to send SAP stats data. But we also have file audit, right? That's an inventory service, and hardware. Things like NT log event. These are WMI queries or WebM queries. So there's different sections in this reporting server that require that you've collected that data in order to see it, obviously. But there are a lot of reports in here that would work out of the box. One of them being this device list by last connect time. This is all core data, so at the very minimum, we'll be able to at least come in here and run the device list by last connect time. And so you can now go through and review all of the different sections and let us know if you have any questions or problems installing the Admin Pro RS. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and please look for more videos in the future.